welcome Judi! Wow.
I've always been a pretty driven person, and you could probably blame that on the U.S. Army, or at least my dad, who was a career Army officer. Now, my dad was a little short guy, and he also was a lot like Edward G. Robinson. You know, the guy who played in the mobster movies, and he'd kind of have a gun in one hand and his cigar in the other, and he'd say, listen, you guys, listen to me. My dad was kind of the same way, although he smoked his cigar all the time, and he had it in his mouth kind of bobbing up and down. It was always wet, and it would bob up and down as he talked. And every Friday, my mom would report to him, and we'd have company punishment when she was Judge Adjutant General, and she would tell our misdeeds, and my dad would pass the sentence. Now, we were never asked to speak up for ourselves. We were never told if we had any explanation, and I'd always say, well, but I want. And he'd come to me, and that cigar was sticking out of his mouth, and he'd stick his finger right up here underneath my chin, and he'd say, if I want your opinion, I'll tell it to you. Okay, but sometimes I'd still go, yeah, but. And he'd say, oh, you want to have the last word? Okay, well, you know, when I go in to see the general, I get the last word a lot. Yes, sir. He said, that's all I want to hear out of you. So he was also from the Archie Bunker group of Stifle Yourself. I pretty much kept a very low profile all through high school. But things changed when I got to college. There was this pretty innocuous announcement in our school newspaper, the Diamondback. Our mascot was the turtle. Anyway, it said, University of Maryland students are going to pass a resolution supporting the president's policy in Vietnam. And I said, but they didn't ask us how we felt about the president's policy in Vietnam. No one else seemed to care about this. But I got like driven. I went to their meeting and I said, listen, you were elected to represent us on dormitory hours or the mascot's name, but you have to pass a referendum or something. You can't just tell the world how I feel. And I wondered why I was so committed to this. And I remembered it was because my dad said, if I want your opinion, I'll tell it to you. And I wasn't going to let these people tell the world how I felt. So I went to every meeting, I argued with them, I had letters in the Diamondback newspaper, and finally they did pass this, and they told the world this lie. Well, I sued the Student Government Association. Crazed. I said, you can't do this. Well, it made the Washington Post. We were in the Capitol Beltway, you know, and then it made the Evening Star, and my dad got to read it from his desk in the Pentagon. He wasn't all that happy, but I was committed to it. Well, I lost the case. But you know, I actually won a lot more because I had learned how to speak truth to power. Oh, by the way, I also found out that I was put on Edward G. J. Edgar Hoover's list of troublemakers. Yay! Right. But you know, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just looking for truth. But you know, maybe they go together. Anyway, I lost the case, but I learned where my voice came from, and I've never been stifled again. And many years later, my dad got a new marriage, and he'd retired, and he'd gotten disillusioned with the military-industrial complex. And he sat me down, and he no longer smokes that cigar, or sucked that cigar, but he had a pipe, and it didn't bob, he just held it. And he said, you know, I want to apologize to you. He said, you know what? You kids were right about that war, and I was wrong. And then he said, I'm really proud of you for sticking up for what you believe. Oh, my God. He apologized. He was proud of me. He said he'd been wrong. It was a very tender moment between us, and I didn't know what to say. You know, I'd never really been trained in tender moments. So I came up with the best I could. I smiled and said, "Yes, sir."